Good afternoon and welcome to this special webinar. This talk is part of the Business Horizon series that Grey Consultants is hosting on behalf of the UK Space Agency. My name is Anushka Sharma. I'm the founder of Naught and I'm delighted to be your host for today's webinar. Today's topic is all about how we can come together to bridge the space skills gap and discuss the challenges within recruitment and come and shed a light on the solutions. As you may be aware, the Space Skills Sector Skills Survey has identified stresses in the industry as skills demand has outpaced supply. Identifying and securing specialist skill sets can be extremely competitive. In this webinar, we're going to explore how industry, government, academia, and the workforce can come together to bridge the space skills gap and the opportunities for business and candidates to develop new skills and capabilities to access specialist resources and support for developing in-house skills. I just wanted to run through the house rules ahead of introducing our panelists and guests today. So this session is going to be recorded and you'll be able to watch again. If you do need any technical assistance, you could do so in the chat where our lovely tech support team can answer your questions directly in the chat function here in Zoom. If you'd like any subtitles, you can enable them by selecting live script transcript from the menu bar at the bottom. And do note that if you need the size to be bigger or smaller, you can adjust that to your requirements. You can also ask questions to our panel throughout the event by submitting them through the Q&A box on the menu bar. We're really encouraging you to get involved and be as interactive as possible with our fantastic expert panel today. So with that, let me introduce today's lineup. Joining us today, we have this awesome expert panel. We have Lucy van der Tas, who's the head of talent acquisition at the European Space Agency, otherwise known as ESA. Welcome, Lucy. We also have Dr. Heidi Thiemann, who's a space project manager and director at the Space Skills Alliance. Hi, Heidi. We also have Joanne Oliver, business analyst at Space Careers UK. Welcome to Joanne. And joining us for our special case study presentation, we have Lucas Wolczynski, who's the founder and organizer of the European Rover Challenge, who's joining us from Poland. So welcome to you all. And with that, we're just going to crack right on, if we may. And I'm going to ask Lucy to come and join us and introduce yourself to our audience. Welcome, Lucy, over to you.
Thank you very much indeed. And it's a great pleasure to be here this afternoon with you all. I have prepared a few slides, which I'll go through very briefly. And I'd like to start by talking about ESA. I will say a few words about myself, and then I will talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we're facing today. So, for those who do not know who ESA is, and I'm assuming that most of you will have some indication, we are the European Space Agency and we are the Europe's gateway to space. I think there are a couple of key issues here in the slide, is that we are quite unique in terms of space agencies. We have 22 member states and a number of associate member states, which means that we're truly international, or I should say multinational, perhaps, since we're based in Europe. We are also the only space agency without a military arm. We work exclusively for peaceful purposes. And we are also the only space agency which covers all applications domains, all space domains. Our headquarters is in Paris. I am based in the Netherlands, which is in fact where 60% of the ESA people are based. And then we have a number of other sites across Europe and our spaceport in French Guiana. And yes, our annual budget looks very large. Yes, it's nearly 6.5 billion, but 85% of that goes back into European Space Agency. We plow it back into to develop industry more. One last point about ESA, that sometimes people think that we're part of the EU. We are not part of the EU. We are an independent organization, a standalone independent organization. We work closely with the EU. They account for about 20% of our programs. But whereas the UK is no longer a member of the EU, the UK is very definitely still a member of ESA. A few words about myself. As you can see, I have been in ESA for a very, very, very long time. I did actually work in another organization before joining ESA. I am actually a UK national. In the meantime, I have dual Dutch nationality, which makes my life a lot easier post-Brexit. And just a couple of highlights from my career. Based in our technical center in the Netherlands, I was in charge of training for 15 years, and then I became an HR advisor. And the main part of that job, that role, was recruiting for the Directorate of Technology, Engineering and Quality, which is where the technical expertise is and is the technical backbone of our matrix organization. And as of October 2020, I became the head of talent acquisition, and my focus is now on marketing ESA as an employer and attracting the right candidates. So just a few words about some of the challenges. Oh, I seem to have clicked to, forgive me, I'm going back. Right, so talent acquisition, we are working within the framework of a retirement wave. I prefer to call this a recruitment wave now. It started in 2020, and between now and 2030, 44% of the ESA workforce will retire. We have a tight labor market. One of the challenges, which is on the left there, positioning ESA as an attractive employer. We have a very strong employer brand. We're a very attractive employer. We do not have a problem attracting in terms of numbers of applications. But there are certain areas like IT, for instance, where people don't think of ESA as a first port of call. And it's areas like this where we wish to raise our profile. People think of us as astronauts. We're much, much more than astronauts. And one of the main priorities for the coming years will also be diversity. I've put there the 3 Gs: generation, gender, and geography. DNA is obviously embedded in ESA's, diversity is obviously embedded in ESA's DNA as a result of our framework with our 22 member states. But we also need to look at gender, which is traditionally women are lower represented in STEM subjects, and that is the focus of what we do. And then generation in rejuvenating the agency and creating a new agency, if you like. So thank you. I will stop now and hand over to my next colleague.
Brilliant. Lucy, thank you so much. And we've pre-supplied a question to you, and I'd just love to pose this to you now for our audience that are keenly listening. Are there certain industries with skill sets directly applicable to the space sector? And can the space sector attract resources from these industries?
I would say that the sectors that are closest to the aerospace sector are, of course, aviation, automotive and railways. And we have recruited people from these areas. It requires a certain amount of upskilling. So there are many skills which are directly transferable, but there are also gaps. But the gaps are relatively small, particularly aviation. And I would say for aviation, that is one area post-COVID, which is coming out of it, struggling to a certain extent. And the aerospace industry could be one area where those in aviation with some upskilling could move to.
Fantastic, thank you. And I know we're coming next to Heidi, and I know we're also asking you that very same question as part of your introduction, but I'm going to hand over to you first, just so you can introduce yourself to our audience. Welcome.
Thank you, and good to be here today. Cool, shall I wait for my presentation to appear?
Yeah.
And then we'll get going. In the meantime, I'll introduce myself. So I'm Dr. Heidi Tiemann, and I'm one of the directors of the Space Skills Alliance. We are a think tank, a consultancy and a research organisation which is working to address the space skills shortage in the UK. There we go. So we have some problems around skills in the UK and the wider kind of world space sector at the moment. But in the UK, the space sector is growing, and it's growing fast. Figures put it at about 3% or more per year. And that's creating hundreds of new jobs every single year. But one of the problems is that surveys like the Space Sector Skills Survey and Size and Health have identified that over half of space companies are struggling to recruit. And many of them are kind of worried about having access to skilled workers. Often also, when companies are trying to recruit, they don't follow best practice and they risk losing really great talent. There's also real skill shortages as well, but there's a lack of good, high quality data about the problem, which makes creating effective policies to tackle it quite difficult. We're starting to understand these patterns a bit better now, but we do know that the space sector is competing, which may answer some of the questions in a minute, and it's competing with sectors which are paying higher salaries and kind of might be a little more attractive. So this is where the Space Skills Alliance comes in. So our work in addressing the space skills shortage is taking a data-driven approach. We really exist to collect and publish data which will support the sector and support policy making and decision making. We also advise on best practice in recruitment, training and inclusion. And we're building a community of people in the space industry, people and organisations who are willing to share data, collaborate and learn from one another in order to tackle the problem. So you may have already come across us before. I think it just moved ahead quickly there. So you may have come across us before in some of our previous work. So in 2020, we carried out the Space Census, which was the first national survey of people working in the UK space sector. So we had responses from around 1,500 people from over 250 organisations, which made up about 5% of the space workforce. And the people that responded really covered every role, region and subsector, from Goonhilly to Glasgow, industry to academia, and finance to flight dynamics. So from this wealth of data, we've been able to extract a lot of information about the space sector, about demographics, salaries, skill shortages, and data on why people joined the sector originally and why they're currently leaving. This is really poignant for when we're talking about skills and talent. So we've also built a space recruitment toolkit. So for people who are working in space recruitment, we have a kind of a toolkit of space-specific articles that will help. These are providing expert advice and best practice to help improve your recruitment. And this hopefully will help you get a kind of a wider pool of better quality applicants from a diverse range of people. So you can find, I think it skipped one, but you can find all of our publicly available work on our website, including work on the space census, space competency taxonomy, and analysis of skills demand in the sector. So that's it from me at the moment, and I'll take off the presentation. We can go back to the questions.
Yeah, and Heidi, if you don't mind, I've got a slightly different question for
Brilliant.
you. And it's, does the UK have appropriate infrastructure to train the next generation of engineers and scientists for the space sector?
That's a fascinating question. Yes and no is the answer. And I think how we can look at that is both from a space point of view and a general education point of view. So starting off with general education, actually, there's a lot of data and a lot of issues that support the fact that there's not necessarily a high enough quality of education that is being supplied to young people in primary and secondary schools and even universities. And this isn't down to the teachers. There's a lot of pressure on teachers who are, in my opinion, not paid as well as they should be, not valued as well as they should be. And these are the people that really need support. And this needs to come from a policy, a governmental point of view. And if we increase support for teachers and for schools at the lower level, every single industry will be benefited. Space will benefit from having a higher quality input of people with high quality skills. From a space point of view, we do have some fantastic, really spacey universities in the UK, and universities who kind of sit on the edge. So they work maybe more on kind of feeding into some of the skills that we can poach from later on. So I do think there is a strong educational background, but I think policy and governmental support at the lower levels will help everyone.
Fantastic, Heidi, thank you so much. I'd like to introduce Joanne to come and take the stage. Joanne is joining us from the spacecareers.uk. Welcome, Joanne.
Hello, thank you for having me first of all. So I'm Joanne Oliver and I'm part of spacecareers.uk. So I volunteer with Space Careers in my spare time, and they are part of UK SEDS, which is the National Student Space Society. So Space Careers is the career resource for the space industry. We have a website, I'll just show you on the next slide, which is basically a job advertisement site focused on early careers. So our main aim is to connect young professionals and students with employers. This anywhere from graduate roles, PhDs, internships, anything to really get opportunities for students and young professionals to get an opportunity in the industry. And we also provide career resources. So This also stems from early students. So if you're in secondary school, you can have a look and go onto the questionnaires, and it gets you experience in work experience, and there's a little questionnaire to fill out, things like that, just basically helping students find their way into the industry and where to go on the next steps. So we've been going since 2015, increasingly getting popular and with quite a lot of employers now. So we do have a niche into early careers, and we are redeveloping our site, hopefully to have further reach and provide more resources for students and young professionals in the future as well. And that's just a basic bit about space careers, and I'll hand back over now.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Joanne. Are there current educational courses at all levels which are sufficient for the existing and near future space sector? And if so, how can we improve them if they need polishing up in any way?
Okay, so I'd have to answer this similar to Heidi, and that is yes and no. There obviously are a lot of courses out there that help students get into the space sector, but some of these aren't always sufficient in terms of the range of courses. So obviously the industry is growing quite a lot, so some courses don't specify to go into the space sector, and there's not often like conversion courses for students to do to get into the sector if they're coming across from a different industry. So that is an area where it's lacking. But also sometimes courses can be a bit behind in terms of industry, because we're such a fast growing industry. They need to keep up with all different skills and how we're growing with the industry. So I think there's a mix, but definitely a lot that can be improved.
Joanne, thank you so much. I'm really excited that we're going to be diving into the questions. So once again, I'd like to invite our audience to use the Q&A facility to submit your questions to our expert panelists. And we're really excited now because we are going to have a case study presentation about the European Rover Challenge. Joining us from Poland, we have Lucas. Lucas, welcome to the webinar. I'd like to hand over to you now so that you can present your case study for our audience. Thank you.
Thank you. So hello, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Lucas. I'm the founder and main organizer of the European Rover Challenge. You mentioned about courses. You asked about the courses, the idea of how to enter the space sector. Generally, in the space, there is a space for everyone. And remember that, because I'm historian, first surprise from my first background. And the second professional background is I'm the professional communicator. So I'm not a tech guy at all. And even with that, I found my own way to space sector 15 years ago, that I wanted to support first NGOs and in bringing their goals to the public audience. And then after a few years working with lots of NGOs, and in particular with Mass Society, for example, we found a way how to move forward from communication to organization and to make opportunities. And one of these opportunities I would like to speak about is European Rover Challenge. I don't have any slides, but all of you right now can go to the roverchallenge.eu and to visit this website where I'll be talking, and then to go to competitor zone, because there are a lot of materials what I'll be talking about. Why I'm talking about Rover Challenge? Because one way to enter the space sector is to participate in international competitions, because there are a lot of them. You can find the competitions, organized and backed directly by ESA or supported by ESA, like European Rover Challenge. There are competitions, supported by NASA, supported by any other space agencies, and this this way actually allows you to, first of all, meet people in space. In space, there is a very important way, a very important thing is to meet people, to learn from people, to work with people. This is very important because, this is first skill you have to remember. It's like a building relations space. We are a very big and getting larger and larger everyday family. And when you enter the space sector, you start to go to conferences one day. Then you find out that this is the family that you can find easily, for example, a job sometimes. When you know people that have a project, that they call you, and it's very easy sometimes. And very surprisingly, you can find yourself working right now in the end of the world in some project. A friend of mine who was once one of the judges in European Rover Challenge, right now is in New Zealand, working for one of the quite big rocket launchers productions over there, because they have a center of operation also in New Zealand, and he's helping them for communication. That's the technical communication for the rockets. So he just moved there, right? And there was a quick spot for him. So actually, this is one way. This is, of course, there are other ways, but I would like to speak particular on this. And the competition I'm representing is European Rover Challenge. So this is a competition, as you can hear, for robotics, for space robotics, because the main idea is to build a rover and participate in the competition that is based on the roadmaps of ESA and NASA for the future Mars missions. And that was in the beginning. We changed it along the way, because right now we are looking more closely on the moon missions as well. And we introduced some of the tasks also for the moon. This is the newest thing that will be introduced this year. But generally, the teams that are participating in this competition, they learn how to, build this guy, right? You can see it. Very nice way. So, but, let's move forwards, because right now on Mars, we have this. So from that one, you can go to this one. Because everything is about, going into skills. And this competition I'm talking about is allowing you to use your imagination, your skills, your friends, and to bring your own ideas how to build rovers. Well, how to do it? We don't send you instructions. That's the first case. But many students at universities, they know how to, dig in for information. They look, for the models of these rovers from US or from EU or from JAXA and whatever. And you can actually find all of informations in internet, but also going to some students, for example, conferences to ask for this. And this is the one part of this competition, because in 2020, well, if you everyone find out in some very strange situation, because the world was closed. There was a huge lockdown, and all of the robotics competitions were closing itself worldwide. Because there are others, there is a University Rover Challenge United States, there is Mohammed bin Rashid's Robotics Challenge in UAE. So there are a lot of competitions worldwide, but generally all of them were starting close one by one. And then we faced really the challenge for ourselves, because the main thing we were always teaching our students coming to this competition was how to solve the complexive problems. And then we find out that we faced the complexive problem. COVID is a complexive problem. And in 2020, it was a very complexive problem. What to do now? How to live? And then we decided that we have to change the competition itself. And we introduced the second formula. You can also participate right now, the remote one. It was a huge challenge for us as well. So we learned as well how to solve this problem, because we learned how to make a pivot, even with this, long organization history of this, because it's eighth year right now we are organizing this. We still wanted to make this pivot, and this is also what you have to learn, how to make pivots sometimes in your lives. Just look at from the other angle. What can you do right now if you face the problem? Every problem has a solution. And we showed that bringing the remote version of the European Rover Challenge brought us completely new, sometimes completely new teams that were participating. Why? Because you didn't have to build this. We were delivering this on the Mars yard, and all you have to do, was to program it and to connect with it. So then from more robotics, automation skills, programming came to the first place, and algorithms and this kind of skills. So actually, I'm talking to you about this to show you that it's also being in space sector, being already in the space sector, you can always find a new challenge. You can always learn a new skill. So based on what we developed in the European Rover Challenge, so I would like to talk you a little more about, to show you from the behind the scenes, actually. Generally, the space exploration is extremely interdisciplinary endeavor. And you have to remember this. It's not about only UK, it's about whole world, because the space is international sector, very international. And we can see in the European Rover Challenge that students that are participating in this competition don't have any experience with working with people from other backgrounds. So this is very important, because even if you go with your way as a robotics, a mechanic, or the person who is very strict in programming, you can find out in any mission that you can work with geologists. Yes, and this is the first gap we can see this, because people didn't know how to work with the person, sometimes studies in the same university, but learning something else. And this is why our competition requires the team to learn from the day one how to be interdisciplinary, because this gives them a chance to win when people are specializing in engineering. So first, build the rover. Geology, you have to bring someone from geology, because there is a task of planning the scientific exploration. Then, totally not from the technical part, but you have to know someone or bring someone for logistics and administration. Yes, and you have to learn how to talk with them, because all of your team has to safely arrive to the place. You have to learn how to plan logistics of your rover, to send it before the competition, and to plan everything in advance. So to work out, okay, if the rover will arrive like one day before the competition, where's the margin of error? It can be lost, right? Something can be, suspended, everything. We had these kind of stories. So you have to think in advance, and you have to work on different scenarios. And you also need to talk with the people like me. I'm coming from the PR and communication sector, because it will also bring you the opportunity to learn how to talk to your superiors when you will have another project idea and you are working inside a corporation or a company or agency, and you want to bring some more opportunities for you. So you have to find a sponsor, internal or external. So this competition, this kind of challenge will make you facing this kind of problem. So you can also learn how to approach these kind of problems. And this skill will help you not only in the space sector, working for the space sector as an employee, but also if you decide to go with this new space, with the startup way, then you also have to learn how to not only do it, but how to speak about it, to convince another people, decision makers sometimes, investors. I'm talking about pitchings, everything like elevator speeches, etc. So this is starting to be very important as well. There was 2 weeks ago a brilliant conference, and we talked about communication as well, because this is one of the skills you have to also start to learn how to do it, to speak about your work in space. And this is very important also for the space sector, because you have to explain why, not only what, why you are doing it. So remember that the space sector right now also requires from you to learn why you are doing something. Why? Because it's very important also to convince people outside the space sector, and you will be one of the spokespersons of whole space sector, because you will be asked sometimes, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Why? Because what I said before, the space sector is for everyone, but the space sector in one of the parts is also relying on the public sector. So I'm talking about public investments, because, for example, the big space missions, the deep space, for example, are brought thanks to the governmental or multi-governmental money. And how this money came to the space sector, well, politicians decide about that. How politicians decide which money goes for space sector and which money goes to other sectors? Well, they look at the voters, whether they support them if they make this kind of decision. So that's why it's very important also to convince the public that space sector is very important. And it's not only the work for people, top over there in space sector, it's also work for people down there, and entering the space sector to show it that it's very, very important. So I would like to also talk about, some examples of gaps and capabilities that we discovered among the teams that were entering the European Rover Challenge. So first of all, preparation of documentation. Okay, guys, to build something like that, you have to plan it. And our competition starts with documents. And it's very, very important because you have to be very, precise. You have to read manuals. You have to read forms. You have to read ERC rules. And this is the first place when we can see that someone is just skipping the rules and asking questions. And we ask him, have you read the rules carefully? Because there is an answer 2 pages away for your question. So you didn't do it. And so first thing is preparation of documentation. So this is the skill we can see in the young students. The second skill, the second gap is presentation skills. So this is something very important. What I mentioned, you have to present. You don't have to only build it, because USC demands from you that you also present. One of the tasks is to present how did you manage to build your rover? How did you manage to plan all of this? You can have amazing rover, winning the competition tasks, but on the presentation skill, we can see that your project was total madness. You lost your project management. There was total madness. And this was not well done project management. And this is very important because in space, sometimes you don't have any second chance. You are building, one instrument that will fly over there, that will be mixed with another instruments or another, sub-suppliers making this. And there is only one chance that it will work. I know people that are one of the judges for European Rover Challenge right now that works for umbilical mechanism for ExoMars mission. So they need to do it, test it, do it. And once the ExoMars or Rosalind Franklin rover actually will land on Mars, then this umbilical mechanism will put energy and to power up the rover. And there is only one chance to do it. So this is very important, right? So the next thing we discovered also with is low experience. This is interesting, low experience in teamwork. So remember, in space sector, you will not work alone. There are many positions, maybe some positions for the solos, but generally it's a teamwork. It's very important. And the last thing is management of the project. So this is very, very important. So how we actually, with European Rover Challenge, approach to bridging these gaps. First of all, we provide templates of documentations. So we saw it. We after a few first European Rover Challenges, we talked with students and teams, and then we decided to provide templates of documentations to narrow their approach, so everyone will be using the same template. So you are working with the international standards, right? Second thing, of course, is that we provide workshops to teams. And you can look for workshops. It's not about ERC, but generally apply yourself to any other workshops. There are a lot of webinars right now, a lot of workshops that you can actually use for building up your position, building up your own skills. But first, think, of course, if you are yourself and you are thinking what to do next, first learn what you don't know. So you have to know what you don't know. So this is the first thing. We also bring mentors during the presentation task, and we are mentoring because we are not only listening, but we are also giving feedback to them. Okay, guys, okay, thank you very much. Now it's our feedback, and we are giving the feedback. You had this and this. We can see that there is madness in your papers, but also we can see that you can correct your angle of speaking about the project. You can mention more about that and that. So this is how we are bridging and explaining these projects. We also use, of course, the Slacks or Mattermost to bring all the explanations, to make Q&As, and generally to activate our mentoring before the competition. So we are there. During the year, we have a lot of questions, but first thing, before we answer, we guide them to Q&A. You have to seek for answers first that are already answered. And on many pages and on many places like European Rover Challenge, there are already Q&As. So first you have to, why? Because we are bridging this skill and this gap that I was mentioned before. So lack of reading the instructions or something like that. First, you have to read manuals. In manuals, very often you will find the Q&As. So then you have to read it. When you go for any ESA tender, you will know what I'm talking about, because there are a lot of explanations over there, and you don't have to ask questions. Sometimes they're already answered. So this is the thing. So we also, to do this, we also partner with international partners. They are coming from both the space agency, because we invite people from ESA that is supporting us from the day one. We also bring from other agencies, but also from the private sector. And sometimes we bring people with very unique skills in, for example, some of the softwares using or stuff from the technology. And then we share this knowledge, organizing webinars. We also creating this kind of, ask me anything sections for the teams already registered, because this is for the team already registered. And for the ERC itself, we are inviting international experts, external experts, to give a speech, to give a workshop on site. And this is very important. So when you go to this kind of competitions, you will always also find some kind of other opportunities to learn. Of course, the organizers always try, at least we try to do it, to fix the time, to fit the time of these webinars to your time over there, because mostly the teams are so busy. Fix it, to do something else. Something is broken. We have to do it now. We have to fix it. We have to work on this during whole night. So we know about that already. So that's why we are giving these workshops on the last day. Yeah, I'm finishing. So generally, the factor that can hinder skills right now, and thing that we can already analyze, and we already saying this. So first of all, is lack of mentoring, proper management. We can see language barriers as well, and of course lack of contact with other teams, with other people that are working on the same project sometimes. What can be recommended right now? So generally workshops and multinational and also interdisciplinary workshops. This works the best. Sometimes the same problem will have different questions coming from robotics and from geology, and they will talk. All they will talk, and then they will find solutions together. And of course, more mentoring activities. We can see that the mentoring, it's helping people actually to understand some kind of challenges they are facing. So I hope that I brought it to in this short minutes, 10 minutes, right, to the spot.
Lucas, thank you so much. There is so much to dive into on your fantastic website. So we do encourage you all to go and check out the European Rover Challenge. Hopefully you're able to stick with us for a few questions. Thank you to everybody watching who's been submitting questions. Remember that you can upvote questions so that we can get them answered live. We're going to go and answer one of the first questions that we've had submitted from the audience. I'm going to direct it to Heidi first, but I'm looking at the rest of our panel to also join in any suggestions and answers they might also like to state. So Heidi, how important do you believe that events are, like conferences, lectures and networking sessions, in generating skills and attracting new talent to the space sector? And do you think that the UK is doing enough to advertise and share all the events that our space industry is running? So maybe the first one is fast. In the over to you. Yeah,
brilliant. Yeah, so I think there's a really great number of events at the moment, a huge range from remote sensing to robotics. I think they're brilliant at retaining and mixing existing talent together. But the problem is it may not be attracting new talent. A lot of people look at the space sector and they think, that's not me, I don't have the skills, I'm not spacey enough to go. So I think as a sector, we could do better to reach out to people who don't believe that they are part of the sector yet and draw them in. And we can also make conferences, networking events more useful at upskilling people by really working on how we link people together, providing useful workshops and providing targeted guidance for people as well. And in terms of the advertising, I actually do think the UK is doing a really great job. There's quite a few networks. I mean, I would very much promote Space Careers and UK SEDS for what they do in sharing all the events for early careers. But for up the chain, I think there's some great kind of up and coming groups like the Space Enterprise Network run by the Satellite Applications Catapult, and the mailing list, which is called Astroverse, which sends you every month a list of all the space training, conferences, webinars straight to your inbox. I'm not affiliated, but I'm going to promote them anyway, but they would be the ones I'd recommend. So I think the UK is doing a good job there.
Fantastic. And we've actually had a question from Joanne, from Alessandra Salini, who's in the audience today. Can any of the resources mentioned in your talk also benefit international professionals? And are there new professions emerging in the space sector that require different skill sets?
Thank you. So if you just repeat the first one again.
So can any of the resources you mentioned in your talk also benefit international professionals?
Yes, 100%. We're not just, although we do advertise a lot of UK-based jobs, because that is our market at the moment, the skills do apply to everyone. So if you want to come along to our webinars, you want to read our articles, the same career resources do apply to applying for jobs elsewhere. We do also have lots of talks with employers on whether they want to employ people outside of the UK as well. So this is very dependent on the recruiter, whether they want to be able to go through the visa applications and things like that. But I think it's a sector-wide thing that we do want to be able to still include international recruitment. We don't just want to stick to the UK for hiring. So yeah, our resources definitely are centered around for everyone to get involved. And the second question was about the emerging professions in the space sector.
Exactly, and the kind of different skill sets they require. Are you seeing an increasing number of those emerging? I'd like to come to Lucy next as well on that question.
Yeah, okay, so yes, I 100% agree. There's so many different professions coming in. Some very niche ones as well, like space psychology. Now there's going to be a whole new astronaut, so focusing on extreme environments, communication, different things like that, that wouldn't have been there if the space industry hadn't have had this growth so far. So I think there is a lot of different new skills that are need to be gained and new research to be done. But also there's a highlight need for different skills. So not just your engineers and your software developers, but also the business professionals, the law professionals. We all need that in the space sector as well to grow. So I think we want to highlight that with space careers as well and bring people over from other sectors into the space sector now. So provide those resources for people that want to get into the sector that maybe already have experience elsewhere. But yeah, anything is possible, but without able to be able to get that reach for gaining the skills and make them adaptable to different sectors.
Fantastic. And I'd like to bring Lucy in because you mentioned recruiting for the retirement gap, so to speak. How does that couple with the new professions emerging in the space sector and maybe perhaps some of the new skill sets that you're looking to recruit for? Could you talk to us a bit about that, please?
Yes, of course. Thank you. I would say that we see this as an opportunity. I mean, to say that we're planning to reinvent the European Space Agency is maybe putting it a bit too strong, but we see it as a big opportunity to really look at our workforce, look at our priorities, and take it from there. I would say that some of the new competencies that we've been talking about, the new skill sets, it's very much digital based. So you have computing, you have the software engineering. We're looking at quantum computing, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity. Digital twins is a big thing at the moment in the space sector. And looking at the retirement wave, one of the things that we have introduced in order to mitigate that is a junior professional program. So whereas we've had for the last 40 years a young graduate trainee program, which has been very successful, we're now looking at one for junior professionals, which in ESA terms is with 2 to 3 years experience. But I would say one of the biggest challenges that we face is relocation, because we require everybody who comes to work for ESA to relocate. And we are seeing post-COVID that people are less inclined to relocate. And I mentioned IT as being one of our big challenges. This is one of the big issues as well, because IT people traditionally do not want to relocate. And I'm not talking here about basic IT skills like programming, because that is outsourced. But we're looking at the management skills which are developed over a number of years. And We've been talking about other sectors moving in, the breadth of the roles that in the space sector. We talked about, Joanne was referring to HR, legal, finance, all these roles we need across the entire space sector. And that you don't need specific space experience to bring in. But when it comes down to these very technical roles that I was talking about related to the software, the cyber and things like that, yes, you need people with a STEM background, and you need them, the further they go in the career, the more specific the experience needs to be. So that can be very challenging.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I want to follow up a little bit more on that point, but we've also had a question for Lucas. And the question from the audience is you've highlighted an interesting point regarding the opportunity to find new jobs and networks at events and competitions. Do you think that the UK is doing enough to promote events such as the European Rover Challenge to new students?
Well, I already answered this right now on chat. So generally, I'm not a person living in UK, so that's a very hard question for me because I don't know. I'm focusing more on the global aspect of ERC, but there is always a two ways in thing, because one thing is some entities promote events, and the other thing is for yourself to find information of the events you are interested or you are seeking for. So my answer is, even if there is some information that is missing, of course, it can be improved, but don't wait. Just, you have to dig it, because there are a lot of opportunities. And there, for example, are competitions you can take right now part. In India, they have a remote competition as well. So you don't have to wait for something to be promoted. But you can find information for yourself, and there are a lot of sources like fan pages for the space passionates. You have to dig for them. You just have to find or join SGAC, right? There was mention on some logos on one of the presentations. So there are communities for young people that have this information worldwide. So you can actually join the competitions and find the information about it. So I hope I answered a little bit, because it was a very hard question.
Okay. I appreciate that. Joanne, I think you wanted to chime in there.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say that there are a lot of events in the UK and things like that. And you did mention, Lucas, about young professionals. So UK SEDS do a lot, and we've got like a National Student Space Conference coming up in March. All things like that. And I do think it is also down to organisations like charities like UK SEDS to do that outreach. But I'm a big advocate for also spreading your passion for it as well. So in the terms of like life imitates art and art imitates life, that kind of thing, that if there's passion for space and you want to do something to get out there, to get the outreach, then that is just something we can do on an individual level to help get knowledge of these competitions, of these events. So that's not just all in this small circle, we are outreaching individually as well and spreading the word about the passion.
Thank you so much. And Lucy, we've had a question for you coming in from Marie Morales, who asks, is it possible for a non-EU citizen to be able to access internships and jobs in ESA?
That's a very good question. And first of all, I'd like to come back to what I said at the very beginning, is that ESA is not the EU. So we have a different member state base. For instance, Canada is an active member of ESA, and it is certainly not part of the EU. But indeed, this is a point that needs to be looked at, because we are limited to recruiting from our member states. So if you are not a national of one of the ESA member states, I'm afraid you cannot be directly employed by ESA. And this is one of the requirements of an international organization.
Thank you so much. And I've got a question for everybody, and this is from Miriam Sari. She asks, are there physical courses for school teachers that can support them in ensuring that students understand the importance of the space industry? Heidi, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I would direct Mariam towards ESRO. And ESRO is it's a European kind of, or it's an organisation that operates all the way across Europe. But ESRO UK, for example, have a huge range of resources and they provide conferences and the opportunity for teachers to go to the national space conference, the UK Space Conference, where they get to interact with professionals, astronauts, all sort of that fun stuff. But they link up to STEM Learning UK, who provide things like lesson plans, outreach activities that students can really kind of benefit from if their teachers get involved. So look up ESRO.
Fantastic. Lucy.
I was just about to mention ESRO as well, because Lisa works extremely closely with ESRO through our education office. And it's also worthwhile looking at the Googling the ESA Education Office, because they have a lot of resources targeting schools, primary and secondary schools, and also university students and beyond that. And this links in actually to a little bit what we were saying about opportunities for students to learn more. The ESA Academy offers a lot of programs, training events, activities, and it's well worth checking out.
Fantastic. Lucas, I think you wanted to add something there as well.
Actually to the previous question, because I forgot one thing, please take a look also at ESA Space Solutions, because we just talking about upstream all the time, and let's not forget downstream activities. And there is a lot of things happening here. And also in UK, you have business ambassadors of ESA actually that are doing their own podcasts, sometimes events. I know actually they are divided across UK, so you have few of them as far as I remember, and you can also find some useful information for example, data usage or satellite data usage. You can go and enter the space sector from this site as being also the, I don't know, startupper using the satellite data provided by ESA. So check also out this kind of opportunity.
I was going to actually ask you a question about workshops that are taking place that people can join, and that was a question from Ruth Bennett. So there's a fair few resources that you've mentioned, but if anyone would like to add any additional workshops, please do let us know. And otherwise, I've got another question, and this one's coming from the audience that says, can the way space works have an impact on being able to hire candidates with transferable skills? And are there roles where people must have worked in space? So two questions. One is, can you pivot into the space and transition into the sector? And secondly, what are the specific roles that you need that are specific to the space sector? Lucy, shall I come to you first?
Okay, thank you very much indeed. We've touched quite a bit on the roles that can transition straight into the space sector, and it depends on how you define the space sector. So my own role in HR, and we've talked about those types of roles, you can go straight into the space sector. You don't need space experience. My first answer to the question that you answered after I'd introduced myself as well, certain industries with skill sets which are almost directly transferable. So that's aviation, the automotive industry, and railways. And obviously, if somebody's at the start of their career, there's no way you can have experience in space. So you can build up a lot of very valuable experience from a number of sectors, which you can then transfer, but it becomes more critical as you move forward. And I would say that when we're looking at recruiting mid-career people, we are looking at people ideally with space experience. And there are some roles where you really just need that. If you want to work in navigation, supporting Galileo, if you want to work very specifically, Lucas is talking about Moon rover, the Mars rover, ExoMars, in these areas, space experience is, I would say, pretty much mandatory. Yeah.
Fantastic. And that was a great question from Kelly, who has also asked another question. Kelly Miller, thank you. Are those who are retiring training replacements or leaving behind their knowledge? So, you know, as some of industry are maturing, perhaps moving on to a different phase in their work life, are we training the next generation and sharing that knowledge? Heidi, can I come to you on that one?
I can't speak for ESA, so I know obviously they've got the retirement wave that's incoming, or recruitment wave, as Lucy said, it'd be better to call it. I think it's a tricky question because we don't know what each company is individually doing, so it's hard to understand whether people are passing on their knowledge before they leave. But we do know from kind of some case studies that actually we are having certain gaps in knowledge around RF and telecoms, for example, where it's maybe not taught so much in university degrees, and it's something that we might pick up on to ensure that we don't have a lack of people with those skills. But I would kind of highlight the fact that there's almost such a huge number of graduates in space now, which is brilliant because there is so much interest. But even if there is some knowledge lost, there is so much knowledge being kind of gained and created all the time that we may lose some, that's inevitable, but we will gain new things and new skills in artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and things that will push the sector in different exciting ways. So I think it's just a case of being aware of what we can lose and making sure we fill those gaps with training with the younger generations.
Would anyone else like to come in on that as well? Joanne, let's come to you.
Thank you. Yeah, so just to reiterate on that, saying that there are training to get these grads, and maybe if there are skills gaps in areas, I think some great opportunities are like space projects, the SPIN internships that have just been released, all things like that, which can connect the students in academia into the industry, because there can sometimes be gaps when you're going throughout your course or your master's or PhD that you don't cover everything that might be in the industry. So I think having that connection is really important for young professionals to be able to get the full range of experience.
Lucy.
Yeah, I can only subscribe wholeheartedly to everything that's been said so far. We have this very specific issue of the retirement wave, and there's a lot being done on knowledge management, knowledge transfer within the organization to ensure that what we need to retain is retained. What Heidi said about new competencies, this is something that we need to bring into the organization from the people who are in university now or exposed to these in their jobs. But I would also like to highlight a number of things that at the heart of ESA is all about knowledge transfer, transfer of expertise. There are a lot of conferences in various technical domains which we support. And we also are active in part of the International Aeronautical Conference, which is taking place this year in September. And we do sponsor a number of students to go to this. And it's a very interesting event. The last one last year was in Dubai. And so it's going to be very interesting for Europe this year to have it actually in Paris. But I would say, depending on the domain that you go into, look around, see what conferences are there, and see who you can go and learn from and build your networks. I mean, LinkedIn is growing and it's already huge. And I would say definitely see what you can do to use LinkedIn networks to meet people and to learn from them.
Thank you very much. And there's one last question, which I think would be the perfect way to bring answers from hopefully every panelist. And it's what training is available for those already in the industry to improve their skills, particularly those in SMEs with less resources to provide direct training. Heidi, should I come to you first on that one?
Sure, there's actually a huge wealth of training and knowledge that SMEs can access. Especially in the last year or so, the UK Space Agency has put in a lot of support to local space hubs and local enterprise partnerships to provide some of this training. So, for example, the training that is being provided here by Gray's Consultancy, by the Southwest, by all the Centres of Excellence in Satellite Applications, by the Satellite Applications Catapult, it is maybe a case of Googling around sometimes, but nearly all of the training provided by the people I mentioned is free, often online and easily accessible. There's also training which is kind of being provided again by some of these people in the format of direct one-to-ones and consultancies which have been funded through the UK Space Agency. So I really would recommend checking them out.
Thank you. Joanne, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think I'll just echo that in the fact that for a lot of them, even companies and employers in companies, it's just making that network with all your people and connecting with others, because that's how you hear about these things in the industry, and just really making use of that connection.
Lucy, would you like to add any final comments?
Yes, I would. I think it's a general comment about people not deselecting themselves, any job. I often get asked to give advice about what studies should I follow, what should I do in order to become an astronaut or to come to ESA. the astronaut obviously is a dream that is there for very few people. Maybe it will become more accessible in the future with SpaceX and the other companies. But I would say, do not deselect yourself from any process. Go for it. Let the recruiters decide whether or not that you're suitable, and follow your dreams. And certainly in terms of studies, choice of route, follow your passion, follow your dreams, and take advantage of any opportunity that comes your way that is relevant and which you will learn from.
Thank you so much. And we're very bang on schedule. So with that, I would just like to say thank you to Lucy, Heidi, Joanne and Lucas for your insights, your presentations and your knowledge today. We had many questions from our audience. Don't worry, if you haven't had your question answered, we'll do our best to come back to you in writing with an answer. We've got a poll that will quickly be popping up on your screens. Sadly, it won't be to our panelists, so you won't be able to praise yourselves, but it's for our audience who are watching who will be able to just submit that poll for us. That would be wonderful. There are 2 more sessions, and the next one is going to be coming up on space sustainability. Do sign up today. You'll see the details on this slide. The link is on the banner and will also be released on all of our channels. So thank you all so much for being here today, and we can't wait to see you at the next session. My name is Anushka. It's been wonderful to host on behalf of Grey Consultants, who are hosting these webinars as part of a series for the UK Space Agency. Thank you very much.